Hey everybody, I'm Greg Soul and welcome to another CIQ demo. Today I'm going to be showing you using Ansible and Ascender to automate hypervisors. So there's been a lot of chatter lately about alternatives perhaps to VMware. So I thought I would show how we automate, well, one, VMware, but also some of the alternatives. And I'm going to be using Proxmox today, but this could be your hypervisor of choice, right? So maybe you do Hyper-V or Overt or really anything else. It's probably going to look and operate very similarly. So let's take a look at my VMware console really quick. If you are familiar with vCenter, right? You've got all of your machines in here. I've got all my various accoutrements, storage, cluster information, all that good stuff is in here. And I can see kind of snapshots for these hosts, or rather these guest VMs. I can see all their snapshots. I can go into their console. I can right click on them, start, stop, edit the settings, all that good stuff's there. If you've never seen Proxmox, this is what it looks like. Feels familiar, right? I've got my information down here. I've got all of my data center, right? So that's going to be my cluster. Here are my individual hypervisors, and then I've got VMs inside. Right now I don't have any. We're going to create some here momentarily, but I've got, say, my templates. I right click on stuff, right? I can right click, create the new VMs. I can edit settings, all that stuff. Feels very familiar. So while the interface feels familiar moving around, I wanted to show you what it can look like to automate against them. So in here in my Ascender, I'm going to go to my template section. And again, Ascender is our automation, our enterprise automation platform that allows you to kind of securely create and share automations inside of here. So I'm going to do my VMware. Let's go to my VMware one first. So VMware control, I wrote a playbook, and we'll take a look at them here in just a moment so you can kind of juxtapose the two to do some VMware control. So this one, again, this is kind of demo purposes. You probably wouldn't necessarily do it in this specific way, but I can click the launch button over here and it pops up what we call a survey. And so a survey is the ability for you to really quickly, easily build all this information you see here to prompt the user to, hey, fill in the blanks and let's build something or let's do something. So I can go and I can get a bunch of information. So here I'm allowing them to choose what they want to do with this VM. Provision, start it, stop it, delete it. So I'm going to provision it because it doesn't exist yet. And so test-Rocky9, I can fill in the blanks and all this good stuff, right? That's going to pick out hard drive size and how many CPUs, all that good stuff. I'm going to click next. I'm going to click launch, and off to the races. It's going to go and it's going to build all that stuff. Now, I want to do the exact same thing for Proxmox. So let me find my Proxmox template. I got it right here, VMware, or rather Proxmox VM control. I'm going to launch it. And again, I have a survey. You can see I pared this one down. I don't have nearly as much information. In the playbook, I have provisions for, say, number of virtual sockets, CPUs, all that stuff. So I can customize the networking and I can add that to my survey, but I just wanted to kind of keep it a little succinct and clean here for this one. So again, I've got all the exact same options: provision, start, stop, delete, that I've created. Now, just because I only have 4 things in here doesn't mean there's only 4 things you can do. I'm just trying to keep this simple, right? There's so much more you can do with this automation. Virtually anything you need to do to the template, to the virtual machine, I can do all of those things through automation. So I'm going to build a test-Rocky9 on my Proxmox as well. I'm going to click next. And really when I click next, what it's doing is it's presenting me with all the information. Basically, here's all the variables that I'm passing in. And essentially that's what the survey does. It takes those variables and it just passes them into the playbook as extra vars. So I'm going to go ahead and click launch, and it should be off and running. I'm going to jump over to the job section, and I can see the status of all of my currently running jobs. So my VMware control is currently running right now. My Proxmox one is going to be running here shortly as well. As these things complete, I'm going to pop over here and I'm going to show you a couple of the playbooks. So here is the Proxmox playbook. Really, essentially, I have a variable section up at the top where I am setting kind of some defaults. Most of these I actually override, but I like putting all of my variables up at the top so that I can kind of see them. It's just sort of documentation purposes. Even if I'm going to override them, I like putting them up at the top with all of the kind of default information or some extra information about what I'm going to be doing with this stuff. And then down here in my task section, you can see here's me building, excuse me, the VM itself. I'm really just cloning, and I'm telling it what template to clone, and I'm filling out some extra information in here, and it will build it. So in Proxmox, whenever you build a new VM, it doesn't start it by default. So I have it provision it. It's going to pause for 10 seconds, and then it'll go ahead and start that VM up. And also with these start and stop tasks, essentially what I'm doing is I'm setting a variable called VM_action, and I'm using conditionals to determine, oh, do I run this? Do I run this? Which task am I actually going to run? So I've got start, stop, delete in there as well. For the delete action, I actually have to stop it really quick, pause just for a second so the API can catch up, and then go ahead and do that delete action. Now, looking at this, you might see something you're unfamiliar with. And it's something my boy Nick just taught me. It's called anchors, aliases, and overrides, and it's something built into YAML. I'm not going to go too deep, too far down the rabbit hole on it, but I just wanted to kind of introduce the concept a little bit. So you have something called an anchor, and if you look right here under this Proxmox auth variable I have in the variable section, I have an anchor. So it's got the @ and then a name, the name for the anchor. Right here I have it the same name as the Proxmox_auth variable. It doesn't necessarily have to be, it could be something else. But what an anchor essentially says is everything underneath this anchor, I'm using it as a reference point, right? So I can come back to this via an alias somewhere else, and I'm just going to basically take this chunk, I'm going to paste it in somewhere else. So it's slightly different because if I take a look at this section right here, so this Proxmox_KVM module, you can see I have commented out API user, password, host. That's variables that are expected to be in here. So I can't just define those variables somewhere else. Those parameters, the module itself expects those to be there. And if they're not there, the module is going to error out. It needs those to be in there. So they can't just be defined somewhere else. But what I can do is I can have an anchor. So you see asterisk Proxmox_auth. That's, that's an alias. So I'm referencing that anchor. So it basically says, take that information and put it under here. Now, if you just put that, it doesn't allow you to add any additional parameters underneath, right? It says this is it in its entirety. But if you add the two less than symbols and a colon, it gives you the override ability. So it says, hey, put all that inside of here, right? And this is all a YAML function. It has nothing to do with Ansible. Put all of that information that we had in the anchor right here, but also allow me to add extra parameters and even override some of the stuff that's coming in. And so that's exactly what we're doing here. So you can see instead of having kind of potentially a lengthy authentication section, I can just distill that down to one individual override statement, override an alias, right? You can see it there. I have it for all of these Proxmox_KVM module calls for each one of these tasks. So pretty cool little feature. Now that you are familiar with seeing what it looks like in Proxmox, right? We have our start, stop, the provision, all those pieces. This is the VMware version. So it looks very similar, does it not? Up at the top, I have all the variables that I'm defining for the host. You can see right there, I have an alias for VMware authentication. I'm using that functionality again. You can see here I'm doing it with 4 specific parameters. Let me say that correctly. Down here, I'm actually doing the VMware provision. Again, it's chunkier, just like in Proxmox, because I'm filling in the blanks on some various extra pieces of information. After that, I have my start, stop, and delete, right? So nothing too crazy or complex. They're both pretty succinct, pretty simple, and they operate essentially the same functionality-wise. So let me pop into my Ascender here. I can see everything is completed. So I'm going to pop over here. I'm going to scroll down a little bit. There's my test Rocky 9 host. I'm going to pop over to Proxmox. There's my test Rocky 9 host over here as well. And again, I can go to the console. I can check on snapshots. I can do all that information or all that configuration from right here inside the interface, just like you would on VMware. Now that it's all completed, say for example, I want to pause one of the VMware VMs. So the one we just created, I want to stop it. Not pause it, but I'm just going to stop it in here. So I could go to the template section and I could find the job template, or I could come in here to one of the previous runs of VMware VM control. And in the detail section, I can actually click on the job template there. There's a lot of shortcuts about moving around in the interface. And so you can get to a lot of the information from a lot of different places. So I'm just gonna cheat and take that quick shortcut because I was already there. So I'm gonna go ahead and launch that. And instead of provision, I'm gonna say stop. So I wanna stop that VM. It doesn't matter that I'm passing over a lot of extra variables. If they need to be used, they will. If they don't, they won't. Here, in this case, really all it needed was what VM, what's the name of the VM that we actually want to stop. If I wanted to do that in Proxmox, it would be essentially the same action. But say, for example, I want to go ahead and do some cleanup. So I'm going to go ahead and go to output. You can see stopped the VM, it changed, so that VM is stopped in VMware. Now, I want to instead, so I'm going to click on details, VMware control. I want to go ahead and delete it. And it will delete this in about 40 seconds. So I'm going to click next. I'm going to click launch. And you know what? I want to go ahead and clean up my Proxmox as well. So I'm going to go to the template section. I'm going to find my Proxmox job template. I'm going to launch that. I'm going to say, you know what? Provision, go ahead and delete that test Rocky 9 VM. Click next. Click launch. And it should be off and running. Let me pop over to the jobs section here. You can see that the VMware one already completed. The Proxmox one is completing now. So I should be able to come over here to my VMware vSphere client and see that it is gone there. And in here, it's currently deleting. You see first it's forced stopping it. So it's going to stop that VM, and then shortly thereafter, stops. It's going to delay, I believe, 10 seconds. And then it'll go ahead and clean this up. So as you can see, it's actually really easy to administer your hypervisors. It doesn't really matter which one it is, right? I could actually go in here and I could make modifications to this. I could change hard drive size. I have some blog posts and demos showing me detecting that, a drive in a Windows machine is having problems. So it actually goes pause the VMs, expands the drive, cranks it back up, connects into the Windows machine, and then go ahead and expand to consume the rest of that. So you can really do virtually anything you can imagine inside of your hypervisors using this automation stuff. It's pretty wacky wild. And the interface can feel seamless, right? So going from VMware to Proxmox or Overt, right, using their interfaces can feel a little bit different. Using automation, it can feel seamless, right? It feels the same. It can integrate into your workflows just the same, right? So those things don't have to seemingly change. And if you use, say, Ascender's API and you've got, an ITSM like ServiceNow, if somebody orders a VM, the user experience doesn't have to change if it is connecting to VMware and configuring it there, or connecting to Proxmox, configuring it there, or Overt. So administrative-wise, it really keeps those things the same. So my next steps on this, I think I want to show how we can actually use automation to migrate VMs from VMware over to Proxmox. I think that would actually be a pretty interesting use case. So I have in the past, if you look up some of my blog posts and videos, I have one on doing kind of manual migration where I stand up a new VM, I back up the configurations from the old, and I build over here. So you could do it that way, but I think it would be interesting to take, say, a Rocky 9 VM that's in VMware and push that over to Proxmox, right? So instead of rebuilding anything, we're just going to kind of migrate those things. So I'm thinking about that. Let me know if you're interested in that and if I should put any time into it. Also, at this point, I like to ask if you have any questions or comments, or you can see yourself using this in your environment, but you tweak and tune it and change it in some specific way. I would love to hear from you. If you have any other use cases or demos you'd like to see, I would love to hear those too. We are great at professional services here at CIQ, so we'd love to come in and help folks not only stand up their automation infrastructure, but also help them do, say, migrations and things like that, help you build those automations, help you kind of get off the runway, get that plane in the air. We can kind of help you get moving. So thanks. And if nothing else, we will see you next time. Happy automating. Bye.